Hi guys, so I am currently in the hospital with my sister. She is wondering what happened at the medical screening just like everyone else. So I decided I'm gonna make the video and tell her at the same time. Just so everyone knows, yesterday I flew out to New York City from Chicago. Did my same routine and how I would travel to medical screening, just go to medical screening and go to the airport and back. Well, at least that's what I thought it was gonna be. And if you're wondering, oh, why is your medical screening in New York? I thought New York doesn't do surrogacy. Medical screening has nothing to do with surrogacy. It's just a checkup. So you can get your medical screening anywhere. It's just the embryo transfer that is not allowed there. When I was in the airplane, I was very nervous and anxious to go, and I was excited. As you guys know, I was putting pictures up of me being in the airplane, me in the airport. I thought it was just gonna be one of those good days. When I landed, my phone, I have two phones. So I have one personal phone and then I have my work phone, which I usually get all my information for my surrogacy and everything like that, and how I contact my agency. So that phone completely died. Like, my son was playing on the games all night, and when I got it yesterday morning, it was completely dead. I happened to grab a charger that wasn't working at the time. So while I was at the airport, I was trying to find a place to plug it so I can find where I'm supposed to go. And I was waiting to get my Uber, and I didn't have the address to to the clinic, right? Before I left my house, I knew I Googled it on my regular phone. So I was like, okay, let me see if the history is still there. So luckily it was still there, and I just pressed the directions and it gives me the options for like a Uber or whatever. So I did that. So I finally went over there and I looked at the time and I took an Uber and I went. It took me about 2 hours to get there because it was just horrible traffic. We took about like an hour and a half. By the time I get there, it's 2 o'clock and my appointment is at 3. So I got there a good hour early. But good thing I went there early because when I got there, they had me do a whole bunch of paperwork, which is normal. I had to put my information or whatever. Then I meet the whole staff. They're very friendly. All the women were really nice, and I was excited about everything. So then it told me to pee in 2 cups, like those cups that you pee in and have the lid on top. So they told me to pee in both of them. So I was like, okay, well, I thought one would be good enough, right? So I had been drinking water the whole time in the airplane. So I was like, okay, I'm sure I have enough liquid in me to fill them up. So I filled them up, and the lady was very specific, like, oh, you have to fill both of them up. I'm like, okay, let's see how much liquid I have in my body. I filled one up and then I filled one halfway, so I didn't completely fill it up. So then I was like, okay. She was like, well, we're gonna need you to fill one more cup. And I'm like, well, I already used the bathroom. Like, I don't have enough liquid in me. She was like, well, we're gonna give you some water so you can try to pee again before you leave. I'm like, okay, fine. So they start giving me water. One of the ladies take me into the office to explain the process and how it works and whatever. And I already knew because of the last surrogacy I had. So I was like, okay, that's fine. They gave me information on the embryos. So I signed my papers and everything, the consent forms for them to, do the procedures or whatever. So then I get my blood drawn. And as you can see on the video, it seemed perfectly fine. Like, they took the blood out, and by the end of the video, we had a little blood, and that was it. They took it out. When they put the band-aid on my arm, like, we were talking, me and the nurse, and all of a sudden my arm starts gushing with blood. Like, it literally, like, it bled through everything. She was like, oh my god, like, has this happened to you before? I'm like, no. Like, I usually, like, get my blood drawn and it just stops, once you put the band-aid. And it was like dripping. I was like, oh my god. So I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna trip too much about it. So she cleaned it up, the band-aid on again, and it stopped. Maybe she just put the band-aid on too loose, because I did see it was a little bit loose, so it was bleeding through. She was fine. She was really nice, and all the girls were very nice. When I was done with the blood draw, they told me to sit down for a little bit so they could talk to the doctor. They had asked me if I had forms from my last pap smear. so they didn't have to do it this time. So I was like, oh yeah, I have my forms for pap smear, don't worry. And I sent it to them, and they were like, okay, great, it looks fine, we're gonna just skip the pap smear today. I was like, okay, great. Mind you, this is a new clinic for me. The clinic that I went to last time was in California, so the doctors are different everywhere. They work differently and they do things differently. I went to the room. They took my weight, my height, asked me questions about past pregnancies, and just making sure overall that I was healthy. So I gave them all the information they needed, and they proceeded to do the vaginal ultrasound. Now, before I went to medical screening, literally 2 days, I was still on my period. I had already been on my period for a good 7 days, and that's usually how long my period lasts. But when I got there, I was just spotting just a little. And so they were like, oh, you know what, it's not gonna be a problem, whatever. Mind you, when you have your period, your uterus, everything on the inside is very tender. So it's very, like soft inside. So when he put the tool in, the clamp, he was very rough. And most of my OBs and all the doctors I've been with have been very gentle with me, and I just felt like he was just so rough, and he kind of hurt me just a little bit. So then he opens the clamp, and he has the swabs, and he's going in there and swabbing really hard. I'm like, like that hurts. I was like, there was a nurse next to him at all times. She was female. So she was looking at me, are you okay? She was always asking me, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. Me, I'm a type of person that I can take pain. So I'm like, okay, this is fine, whatever. And then he was done with the swabbing, and he was ready to put the vaginal ultrasound. So when he's putting the vaginal ultrasound, it does hurt a little bit because they're moving and they want to see your ovaries or whatever. But usually it's not as painful as it was yesterday. So he is looking around and everything. He's like, oh, we see an ovarian cyst. And I told him, well, I've had this cyst for a couple years now. It's very small. It hasn't done anything to risk my health or anything. He's like, oh, okay, that's fine. We're just going to monitor that. It's not big enough to be concerned about. So he was just making sure we just monitor that. And so that's one of the reasons why he wants me to go back to retest. He also found a little blood clot. Mind you, I just got off my period. Most women throw out blood clots through their periods. So that was very normal for me. So he's like, oh, well, it's because you probably had your period, but we want to monitor that too. I'm like, oh my God, I hope that I pass this medical screening. I was just so nervous and so in pain, and I was like, okay, fine. He's a doctor, obviously he knows best. So the next step was pretty much simulation of what the embryo transfer would be like. So instead of being with an embryos, it would just be the saline solution. So with that, it's like a catheter kind of needle kind of thing that goes into the uterus, and they will put the saline with the embryos, and it will go into the uterus and it would stay, and that's how you would get pregnant. So he was starting to do that simulation, but mind you, he had been so rough the whole time that my stomach was starting to cramp. And so when he put the liquid inside, I felt everything. Like, I felt the liquid going in, I felt like everything. And so it was so shocking to my body that I fainted. I kind of like, oh, I gotta sit back, So they're like, oh, okay, let's just lay down. We're gonna bring you water. We're gonna bring you some Tylenol. Just relax. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I do not remember any of this for my first surrogacy. Like, for my first medical screening, it was so perfect. So I'm just hoping I pass the medical screening next time, the one that will be on the 10th of October, and see the progress and how my uterus is, so I can be a surrogate. So let's cross our fingers, let's pray. I really want to do this surrogacy again. I just love being pregnant, and I'm pretty much done having my children, but I like the experience of pregnancy and growing a child in my body. So I know a lot of people need people like me to have babies. I'm so willing to do it, and so let's hope that God allows me to do it one more time. That is my update. But if you want to hear what happened after medical screening, was I feel like put the cherry on top of the bad day. So like I said before, I didn't have my work phone on. It was dead. So I didn't know what time my flight was back home. So I was like, you know what? I shouldn't risk it. I'm just gonna go downstairs, I'm gonna get something to eat, and then I'm gonna go back to the airport. That was a bad idea. I should have just went straight to the airport. And I know things happen for a reason, but I mean, it was just ridiculous yesterday. So I went downstairs, and there was like a little sushi bar, and I was like, you know what, I'm really hungry and I'm a little lightheaded, so I'm just gonna eat something so I can, you know, gain my energy again. So I ate like this really nice sushi, regular California sushi, and it was really good. I ate it, but then I was waiting for my Uber. Mind you, I landed in the JFK airport. So anybody would think, okay, well, I came from that airport, I'm gonna go back to that airport. It just makes sense, right? No. I was on my way to the airport, back to JFK, the one I landed in, and it took me about 2 hours to get there because it was about like 4 to 5 o'clock, and it's just rush hour, and everybody's trying to get home or get lunch or whatever it is. It was just so packed, and my stomach was hurting, like I was feeling nauseous. I was like, oh my god, it was the food, and it was just the worst experience. When I got to the airport, I was like trying to find my, you know, a place to get my ticket, and I'm just like, you know, I'm kind of lost. And then they look it up, and they're like, well, ma'am, this is not the airport that you're supposed to be in. You're supposed to be in LaGuardia, not in JFK. I'm like, but I landed from here. They're like, no, your ticket says that you have to go to LaGuardia. And I start freaking out because I'm like, oh my god, I have to be at the airport in 2 hours, you know? And I didn't have enough time to get a Uber ready. I was just like, I need a taxi. And you know, in New York, you could get a taxi like this. So I got a taxi, I got in there, and I was like, okay, take me to LaGuardia. It took me about 30 minutes to get there. So I got there, I went through security. It took a good minute to go through security. By the time I got to my gate, I only had like 30 minutes left. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I was feeling a little bit hungry again, and I was like, you know what, let me settle my stomach down. So I go to this, it's like a little restaurant next to my gate. So I was like, okay, it's the closest thing. I can see if they're going into the airplane, if anything. I sit down, and there's like a little tablet on each table. You can order your food there. So I'm ordering my food. I get a little pasta plate and some water. So it's supposed to be served within 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get it. Within 5 minutes, I got my water, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, and my food is not there. And I'm just like, oh my god, where the fuck is my food? So I asked one of the waiters, I'm like, oh, you know, I've been waiting here for my food. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna go check in the kitchen. I'm like, okay. I'm going through my bank account, and I'm like, did it even work? So I saw that I only paid for the water, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna starve. So I've been drinking water the whole time I was over there in the clinic, and then I got water because I was really thirsty. And I was like, okay, forget it, I have to go on my plane. I went on my plane, and I needed a pee so bad, and every time I wanted to get up to go pee, there was a huge line in the airplane, and I was like, oh my god, I just have to wait. And it took me like an hour and a half to get to Chicago again. I finally got there, and I had given my partner the wrong time to be there, so I got there a little earlier, and he was just like, wait, you told me to be here on this time. And I forgot that there was an hour difference, so I was like, you know what, it's fine, I'll just Uber. And so everything did not go my way. It was just one of those bad traveling days, and one thing I would probably try not to do is do a one-day trip. So if you guys do surrogacy, just try not to do the one-day trip. Try to stay there for one night and then leave the next, because I felt like it was just too overwhelming yesterday. So yeah, that's how my day went yesterday, and I'm just hoping that everything gets back to normal and that I can retest and pass the test and then just become a surrogate. And now you know. I will give an update on the next thing that happens. This is my video for today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!